Hey, William Gilmore here for the ScreenwritersJourney.com, and it is day 37 of the journey. Now, today we're going to get back to my screenplay come-ups. Back in mid-September, we went through the first act and looked at the differences between the original version and the new version that has the Save the Cat paradigm applied to it. If you don't know what Save the Cat is, I believe back on day 14, or right around there, I did a whole piece on Save the Cat and what it is. It's basically a method of using plot points on prescribed pages to sort of outline your screenplay. Hit those points and you've got a decent story being told. It can have the effect of being a little formulaic, so you have to know how to work those and create that original fresh feeling. Maybe bending the rules a little bit, which is what I have done here with this piece. So today we're going to look at the first half of the second act. If you want to see what those changes are specifically, you can download from the links above this video. One is for the original version of the screenplay, and the other is for the version with the Save the Cat paradigm applied to it. And you can see how the page count has gone down and see what scenes have been rewritten, things like that. For a detailed analysis of what those changes are, I'm not going to go into that here in the video because it would just take too long. You can find them down below in the text area of this blog. There are 6 pages of single-space type that goes into some detail on what those changes are. But with that being said, let's have a look at what the Save the Cat in the second act is. Basically, we have 3 plot points over the first half of the second act. So that's going to cover about 30 pages of material. We had our turning point happened on page 25, and so we've got about 5 pages max to wrap up the first act and get into the second act. My first act wrapped up on, my turning point was on page 25, and I wrapped out of the first act on page 28. So my second act actually begins on page 28 near the bottom, and that is a whole new world for Shep, Grady, and Tyler. They're arriving at Grady's house. Now, when we last saw them, they had just come out of a confrontation with Tyler. Shep has been shot in the shoulder. Grady wants to take him to the hospital. Tyler says, absolutely not. Pulls out a gun. We're going to your place. You're going to do the surgery. And Shep agrees with him. He's our main hero. All 3 guys are sort of acting as the protagonists at this point because they're all involved together. Shep goes along with his brother against his best friend. It's a decision he makes, and it may be one he's going to regret. So that is our turning point. The guys head off. Raydell discovers the boat. He's now got a way to figure out who these guys are. So that wraps us out of the first act. So at the top of the second act, we're arriving at Grady's house. It's absolute pandemonium. The world is obviously different now. There's panic. There's chaos. They were out on a boat just having an idyllic afternoon fishing, and now there's blood. People are pulling guns, and it's just been terrible. And they've arrived at Grady's house, which should be a safe place for them. It's a place that they're familiar with. They know. It's Grady's home, and it's just absolute chaos. We start to introduce new characters, and that's part of our B story. B story begins on page 30, according to Snyder. This really isn't the beginning of the B story, per se. It's sort of a cleanup from Act 1. We've got to take care of that issue of the shot shoulder. We can't ignore it. In Star Wars, after Luke's aunt and uncle are killed, he takes off to join the Rebel Alliance with Obi-Wan, the droids, and they're flying off with Han Solo. He's left his home planet behind. 2 different worlds, completely separate. In this screenplay, it needs to be a little more organic. We don't have that sharp dividing point between the first and second act because we've got this injury in the shoulder, the Shep shoulder, that has to be taken care of. But it does establish for us that the world has drastically changed. Things are in flux. We are starting to meet some new characters. We get Mara, Grady's wife, and the 2 kids. So she's panicked. What's going on? Why are these people in my house? Why is Shep shot? There's blood everywhere. The kids are panicking. Get the kids out of here. So it really establishes that the world has changed for these three guys. So we actually get to what was technically the start of our B story. This could be part of the B story, but it's really sort of a cleanup, really is what it is from the first act. And it's necessary. It's an organic piece. It's a segue from the first to the second. I think it works fine. So the B story actually begins with Raydell going to Ramon's house. He's called Ramon from the cabin. I need your help. Now we're going to find out what that help is. This is sort of a similar scene, thematically, certainly not in tone, to the scene with the guys just before this. This is Raydell attempting to deal with the new world that he finds himself in. In the first act, he had a brother, he had a crew, they were going to make this big deal and become rich. Now he's got no brother, he's dead. His entire crew has been wiped out. He lost the money and the drugs got away. And he's going to have Hiram coming down on his back. So it's a very, very big change for Raydell as well. We introduce a new character here, Ramon. Ramon's not going to be around very long. He gets dispatched fairly quickly. But this whole scene is basically a setup for Raydell trying to clean up the problem to appease Hiram. If he can clean this up, maybe he can make this right, and he can survive this. It would be easy for Raydell just to take off right now and go. But he doesn't. And that's kind of an issue. You kind of question, well, why doesn't he do that? Well, he's got a family. And that will come into play here very shortly. It's a question that gets asked right here, and it's okay if it gets asked because I am going to answer it. I don't have to answer it right now, although some people think I should. I think it's okay if we wait a little bit. So we see him trying to take care of Hiram's problem, even though Hiram hasn't gotten involved yet. So it is a start to the B story, sort of a setup for it. And that takes place on page 31, as opposed to page 30. So I'm about a page off there. Not too bad. I'm not sure how to get that down yet, but from there, we go back and forth from Ramon's house to Grady's house, and we're getting into the section that Snyder calls Fun and Games. Now, Fun and Games also coincides with the B story. It also begins on page 30 and runs through page 55, which is the midpoint. And the B story, or the Fun and Games, the B story sort of gives us a little breather. We get to meet some new people. We don't get a lot of breather yet. We'll get that in shortly coming up. But we're getting into the Fun and Games. And the Fun and Games is sort of, as Snyder describes it, it's the promise of the premise. This is what your movie's about. This is where, everything we've set up starts to happen. It's a good place for an action sequence or a set piece. This is where a lot of your trailer moments are going to be found. And there's certainly a lot of trailer moments in my section here. I don't have big set pieces, but I certainly have the trailer moments. I've got the surgery happening in the garage. That'll be some cool stuff. The pandemonium and screaming going on there, and the cutting in the shoulder and blood coming out. That'll be a good thing. We get the disposal of the bodies. The guys dumping the bodies in the pit. Lighting the torch, and throwing that torch in, and the flames. Those flames are going to be in the trailer. We get a shot of Tyler looking at the box of money in the back of the truck. Always show the money. It's like rule number 1 in a trailer. So definitely trailer moments scattered throughout here. We get our introduction to Hiram. Hiram didn't show up in the original version until after the midpoint. We did see him in the news interview on a TV screen, but he didn't show up as an active character in the piece until 67, 68, I don't know, somewhere in there. It was way late. And if he's going to be our ultimate villain, if he's the antagonist behind everything, it's just far too late for him to be showing up. You don't want your antagonist doing that unless you've got a really good reason to save him until the end. And Hiram just needed to be more active. I needed to move him up. So you'll find a big change between the two scripts in the introduction of Hiram. It makes Raydell's actions at the pit with Ramon more believable. It gives a motivation to why he has to kill Ramon. We also get the threat from Hiram that if you try to run or you don't make this right with me, I'm not going to just come after you. I'm going to get your kid and your wife too. So stakes are raised for Raydell. Not a lot of breather going on here yet, and that's what should be happening with our B story. We finally get some of that breather after the surgery, after the execution of Ramon. The first one is with Grady and his son. It's a nice little father-son moment, sitting quietly in the room as Shep is sleeping. It's our first real chance to go sort of process everything. And yet our story has continued on around that moment. We haven't raised the stakes a whole lot except for that one scene where Raydell gets threatened by Hiram. The tension has remained, but the stakes haven't really gone up until that point. And then we get a quick breather. We get another breather when Shep wakes up, and we have a nice little moment between Grady and Shep before they find out that they're the ones who are being hunted. At that point, we start raising the stakes again, and we're coming in on our midpoint. The midpoint is exactly what it sounds like. It's the midpoint of your screenplay. And this is, as Snyder described it, it's where you drive a nail in a wall and you can string out your story on either side of it. It's either a high point or a low point, both of which are false. Our hero either thinks they've attained what they wanted, only to discover that that wasn't what they wanted, or it didn't come out the way they thought it would, or they believe that the world has collapsed around them and they are at an absolute low. But of course they aren't, because they still got to get to the end of the movie. They got a long ways to go before they hit their low. So whatever it is, it's a false moment. But it's a big moment at that point for the character. And my midpoint is a big moment for Shep, because that's where he's going to step away from the guys and become our ultimate protagonist, our ultimate hero. As I said, they've kind of been working in tandem because they've all three been together and going through this whole thing together up until this point. During the surgery, when Grady hesitates at the last minute, he says, "Are you sure you want to do this? This is a stupid idea." Shep says to Grady, "If you can't trust your best friend, who else is there?" Well, obviously Tyler's a dipshit. He's not going to be of any use. He's been off to the strip clubs. He's bought himself a new car or truck, and now he's high as a kite. He's useless, and that's where we are at the midpoint. And he's got the drugs, he's got the money, I'll share it with you, we're going to be rich, it's going to be great. And Shep is just like, I can't believe this is happening. I got a freaking bullet in my shoulder, and you're out here partying it up like it's New Year's. And he turns to Grady and says, "Come on, we'll sort this all out back at the house." And Grady says, "I'm done. I'm out. This is too much for me. I got a wife and kids. I can't deal with this. I can't be involved for their sake." And he walks away and leaves Shep all alone. And so that line from earlier, "If you can't trust your best friend, who else is there?" really comes into play here, because his best friend has just walked away. He is alone with this coked out half-brother who he doesn't really like, who has jeopardized all their lives. It's a very low moment for Shep. And so at this point, he's either got to step up and start making some decisions outside of the group, or he's going to be in some serious shit. And so it's a good, strong midpoint. My midpoint is coming a little late. It actually happens just over the top of 57, so it's about a page, we'll say an eighth. Page and an eighth too late. It should happen on 55. I tried to convince myself there was a moment in that midpoint scene where it says Shep is defeated, and he leans against the truck. It's like, oh, fuck me. And I try to convince myself that was the moment. And I can say that is the actual midpoint, and the rest of the scene is wrap up, but it's not. The actual midpoint, that big moment, is when Grady walks away from him and says, "I can't do this anymore," and Shep is alone. And that happens on the top of 57. Literally like the first 2 or 3 lines of 57. And try as I might, I could not shrink that down. I could not get that page out. I did lose a scene with Willie the pool player. the Stan's Hideaway Grill. It was sort of a false obstacle for the guys. They're trying to find Tyler, and Willie ultimately told them to go to the strip club. But it was first they went to Reggie the bartender, and she said, "I don't know. Why don't you go try Willie the pool player?" And Willie the pool player said, "Well, I don't know. Why don't you go try the strip club?" And it was just it was just sort of this false obstacles, preventing them from finding Tyler. It's not that big a deal. Find Tyler, let's get on with it. But we have to know where to go look. So I really only needed one person to say where he was, and that was Reggie. If I lose the Reggie scene, if I keep the script as it is right now, and did change another thing from the midpoint on, Reggie is a useless character. She can go away. I can lose that scene. I get my midpoint down. It'll be perfect. But then Shep's the only guy without a girl. Problem is right now the girl's only in that one scene. She never shows up again. So she's as a girl. She's useless. Sorry. Grady's got Mara. Raydell's got Khalida, and Tyler's got the strippers. Poor Shep's got nothing, and if he's going to be the hero, he needs a woman. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to involve her in the third act to lead up to the ending. Because I have my ending right now, I'm not happy with my ending. It's kind of contrived, and when I was thinking about removing her, I thought, well, wait a minute. I really need her as a female counterpart to him, and I can use her to maybe distribute or get rid of this money somehow and involve her more. So for right now, that scene stays. So I'm still a page off on the midpoint. But if I can find that page in the first act that'll bring the B story from 31 to 30, that'll also move the midpoint down a page and put it just about perfect. So things are close. Still got a little finessing to do, but I got to go back to the first act and sort of beef Shep up a little bit to prepare the audience for him becoming the ultimate protagonist. He's a little flat yet in the first act. So that's going to add some stuff. So there's definitely another round of rewrites coming, but I'm going to keep going through this right now. Once I sort of get this all done, then I go back and finesse. So that's it. Those are the 3 plot points of the Save the Cat for the first half of the second act. Again, you can find all the details about everything down below in the text. You can download the original version and the Save the Cat version right above this video. I'll be back here on the blog tomorrow. If you have any comments, definitely leave them in the box below, and I'll take a look at those, and maybe we can have a discussion about some of the stuff. So until then, I'll see you back on the blog. Have a good night and a pleasant tomorrow. Keep writing.